I was working in a lab management role, state police crime lab in Albany, New York, and it became clear to me that there were some challenges with burnout and vicarious trauma. Vicarious trauma is trauma that you experience from exposure to something that you didn't personally experience. So if I'm working, let's say, a homicide case, I'm not a victim of that crime or a friend, but I could still be affected by being exposed to that case. COVID really challenged us mentally and emotionally. I was a single mom. I was working full time at this demanding job. I started to expand my network even more.
Welcome to The Business Game, the show that breaks business down into real levels, from $0 to $200 billion, so founders can see exactly where they are and what comes next. Today's guest is playing at level 1, the founder survival stage. At this level, you're proving the model works. You're validating demand, refining positioning, and fighting for consistent revenue. The challenge? Doing almost everything yourself, hiring your first team member, and stepping from practitioner into CEO. The goal? Turn expertise into traction and build momentum that's repeatable, not accidental.
Welcome to The Business Game. I'm Kalina Steno.
And I'm Steve Plummer.
And we're joined today by Lori Ana Valentin. Lori Ana is an analytical chemist and management coach, helping scientists and engineers become better leaders inside highly technical organizations.
She's building a business in a niche most people never think about, working with STEM professionals to solve complex leadership and organizational challenges, while balancing a full-time career, growing her client base, and turning deep expertise into a scalable business.
Let's dive in with Lori Ana Valentin. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Lori Ana, you've got a really unique niche, depending on where you're sitting on the globe. Scientists and engineers in leadership. So can you tell us a little bit about what Radiant Journey does and where the idea actually came from?
Certainly. So the idea originally came from my time working at the State Police Crime Lab in Albany, New York. I was working in a lab management role, and it became clear to me that there were some challenges. This was pre-COVID, with burnout and vicarious trauma related to those civilians who are working criminal cases. And so that is actually where Radiant Journey started, was more of the burnout vicarious trauma piece. And once COVID hit, shortly thereafter, I started working with chemists through the American Chemical Society on resilience building. So utilizing your analytical mind to dismantle limiting beliefs, minimize burnout, things of that nature. So I started doing that work. And then as I evolved and as I grew professionally, I ended up leaving the crime lab to go work at a local college as the director of professional development. I really wanted to do more of that professional development piece. And as I grew, so did my work and so did my clients. And so that's when I started working more in that management coaching role. And that really grew from there.
Yeah, wow, incredible.
Yeah. Just that, for our listeners, that vicarious trauma, can you just explain that a little bit so we all know we're all on the same page with that?
Vicarious trauma is trauma that you experience from exposure to something that you didn't personally experience. So if I'm working, let's say, a homicide case,
yes,
I'm not a victim of that crime. I'm not a relative of the crime the victim or friend, but I could still be affected by being exposed to that case or that scene or any other elements. So that's the term vicarious trauma as it applies to forensic scientists. Before COVID, it really wasn't a thing. But after COVID, it's really common knowledge, and there are a lot of resources now. But prior to that, there weren't many resources, if any. So I got the lab involved in a couple of studies that were, starting out in that area. And so we started providing resources to civilians.
Yeah, right. I guess it's almost that hidden cost, isn't it, of what, that law enforcement, part of that whole journey that people go along. Yeah.
What is it that I think that COVID sort of
brought to a head in that space?
Yeah,
Then
that's interesting.
what is it? You said that it wasn't a thing, and then it was post COVID. What is it about that time, do you think?
COVID really challenged us mentally and emotionally, globally, regardless of where I worked.
We all know what we were doing, don't we?
Exactly. So, the isolation, the social isolation, the uncertainty around, global health, is so all of that affected all of us, I would describe this trauma, emotionally and mentally. So because now there's more of a focus on mental health, especially in the workplace, that's a topic now that is much more common, particularly in the forensic science sector.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
What was the biggest bottleneck you had to break through early on to get your first real traction, in your consulting role?
Finding clients. At first, I was working full time at the crime lab.
Yeah.
And so finding clients was probably the toughest piece at the beginning. I was a single mom. I was working full time at this demanding job. And so I joined a scientific professional organization, the American Chemical Society, and I started to network through there slowly but surely. And then once I left to go to the college, I started to expand my network even more.
Yeah, okay. One of the transition phase is really fragile, isn't it? When you're still working in your role and you're changing over. Was there ever feelings of conflict of interest, or you felt torn in two or three different directions? Did that ever crop up for you? And if so, how did you work your way through that?
Life is always a balancing act. And so I'd argue that I probably feel that way in general on any given day, given, whatever's going on in my world.
Okay.
I certainly prioritized the full-time job that I had. I had a family to support, and financial stability was the most important thing. I knew that a certain risk tolerance would be needed for me to go full-time with the consulting, which I'm doing now, but I just wasn't there yet. So I ensured that I prioritized the full-time work, which I was developing and honing skills that I could use with the consulting because I felt it was an investment. Of course, family life, and then building where I could, when I could fit it in with the consulting work. And over time that shifted and that balance changed. And now the consulting work is the full-time job.
Yeah, right. With you said bringing on clients was one of the most difficult sort of parts about starting out. How did you approach that? I imagine, it's such a specific niche. How did you sort of educate your potential customers coming on board? And because, that's a different type of personality. So how did you approach that? What was the...
Yeah, it is. And so interestingly, I feel, I know I speak the language.
Yeah.
I'm an engineer, and I communicate using what I like to call chemisms. So it's where I take an organizational or social concept and I frame it as a chemical concept or a system. And I explain it to them in those terms so that they can understand the value and understand the function. So for example, emotional intelligence, that is, I describe it, that's a reagent in our chemical system. It may be an invisible one, but it's a limiting reagent. So it's going, and in a chemical reaction, you have reagents those are the chemicals that are causing the reaction. And then you have the product, the thing that you're interested in, right? And that yield is going to depend on the quantity of the reagents. It's going to depend on other conditions, temperature, et cetera, right? Environmental stuff. But I argue that something like, emotional intelligence is also a reagent in there. It's an invisible limiting reagent. It's going to limit the amount of yield of your product. So by providing them with examples like that, tangible, real world science for system examples, they see that value, and then I can get buy-in. But it certainly, at the beginning was challenging, especially while I was working full time, to get those audiences and establish myself.
Yeah. Right.
So just on that, building predictable revenue, that is always such a a pain point for startups, right? It's rather than it being a random act, making it consistent and reliable. So how have you navigated that to turn it from a random act of marketing almost, that, hey, lucky I landed a client, to something that is more predictable, that is building a business?
Relationship building and relationship management has been huge for me. Having the network allows me access to the clients.
Yeah.
So even though it's niche, it's a big pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
STEM is a huge pool.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and it spans sectors, government, industry, academia. So there's a lot of potential there. So starting with those relationships, when I was starting out, I did a lot of volunteer work through that scientific organization that I mentioned. And I worked with students that were in graduate school at the time. Those students graduated and went on to work in industry. The two largest industry contracts I had were from students that had graduated and gone on and encountered something at work or an opportunity for professional development. And I was the first person that they called to bring into the organization. So for me, relationship building, my reputation, my work product, that's everything. And it has taken a long time to build that. But now I have such a strong network that I'm able to get in with different organizations pretty easily because I know someone, or I know someone who knows someone who's willing to make an introduction. So building that web of that network has been huge for me.
Yeah, that's such a clever way to sort of be front of mind, is to get there before they need someone, is to create those relationships. Like you said, what's the saying? The greatest currency on earth is your effect on others, I think. So
I love that.
yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah.
That's
I think that's a Jim Carrey one.
Okay.
So I'm curious about the stage that you're at. What would you say in terms of, in a business sense, that maybe people just that haven't started a business yet, that they just don't understand about this phase?
I think that financial planning is the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's the scariest thing, right? People are afraid to talk about money oftentimes, or think about it, or hold a critical lens to it. But at the end of the day, if you're starting a business, you need to have a solid financial plan.
Yes.
I mentioned that at the beginning, I was a full-time, employee. And I knew at that time that priority was making sure I had the benefits and the income so I could support my family. And that at some point, I would be able then to move into the full-time consulting work because I saw so much potential. I just wasn't there yet. So having a financial plan, getting help if you need it. You don't have to do it alone. I have a financial planner that I work with. I have an accountant that I work with, ensuring that everything is in place that I need so that I can work within my risk tolerance, my financial risk tolerance, because there may be times that there's not as much income or none, especially when you're starting out. How do you weather that while maintaining your trajectory? So financial planning to me is the most critical piece.
Yeah, that's great advice.
I want to talk a little bit and examine the fact that you're in such a niche market. You mentioned before how you turned it into language that people within that niche could readily identify with. So I'm just wondering, for listeners who are in a similar boat with a very specific market, has it been easier, do you think, or what lessons at least can people listening who are also in a niche market take from your journey?
I think it's important to assess the market and the competition. Again, it kind of brings you back to that risk tolerance.
Yes.
And, certainly if it's a really competitive niche market, if you have a great product, that you believe in and a service, and, certainly pursue it. I'm not discouraging anyone from doing that, but I'm encouraging people to be mindful about it and aware, collect the data. What's the market? What's the competition? How do you compare? I'm in a niche with a huge market and a small pool of competition if you consider PhD chemists who are doing management coaching. A lot. So,
Well, I know one.
Yeah.
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 Right. So for me, it felt, that's why I was so confident
Yeah.
in pursuing this, because I knew if I was strategic about those relationships and the reputation and the services that I provide, that I would have a really wide open area. So I would encourage those who are in also a niche market to evaluate that holistically, be honest with yourself, and make a solid plan.
Yeah. Just on that, oftentimes in that startup phase, it's almost like you take anyone who's got a checkbook kind of thing, because income is important. Did you go through that phase, or were you, because you were working and also consulting at the same time, did you not need that, almost that survival, I'll take anyone at the early stage? Or did you also go through that where, at the end of a client engagement, you might have gone, actually, that really wasn't enjoyable for me or them. Did you go through that phase as well?
So I'm fortunate that I haven't had projects that I haven't enjoyed.
Yeah.
So that's a really good thing. I think I'm pretty discerning about identifying, what sparks joy for me, because time is so limited.
Yes.
But I will say I've absolutely stepped out of STEM. I worked early on with a boutique travel company that I found through a connection, and who thought that my team and I could be of service, and we were. I also worked in transit. So I've worked in other fields. I prefer, the STEM group because I know them so well. I understand them so well. There's a bit more variability in the other industries. But yeah, I've absolutely stepped outside, and it's helped me to grow and learn and develop new approaches.
Yeah.
I want to lean into a little bit about what you just said before about you are very discerning about what brings you joy. And so obviously that means you're very discerning about who you work with and how you choose to navigate yourself in business. What's your checklist? How did you come to learn? That's a skill that's learned. I don't think you just automatically choose that. Was there a moment that you went, no, okay, this is my boundary and this is my checklist moving forward?
I think that because time has been a limited commodity for me for so long,
Yes.
as it relates to the consulting work, I knew that I wanted work that would help me grow, either hone or develop a skill or illustrate that skill so that I could market it. And I had very specific areas that I wanted to work in. So specific types of trainings that I was willing to do, and areas that I wasn't interested in as much. So that's kind of helped me to use that lens. And I've had no problem telling people, that's something outside of my wheelhouse or my area of focus. And so I won't be able to support you with that, but I can make a referral, to another professional who can help you with that.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's awesome.
I do like that. That can help me focus on the skill or illustrate my skill or develop a skill. That's a really nice little checklist for someone, an expert in a field like that. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, being a mom myself, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about being a single mom in that early phase. So you're working full time, you're a single mom, and you're also trying to launch into this thing that you're really passionate about. You can see an opportunity. And, there's a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs see an opportunity and all they want to do is just get there as quickly as possible. But obviously, you've got a family to support. You got a lot going on. You're trying to get there, but you also have to be mindful of what's, the steps. So was there a moment that nearly broke you or made you seriously question continuing? Because there's probably a few, I would imagine. If so, if there's one that really stands out, could you talk us through how you pushed through that moment?
Absolutely. So certainly, the journey has been a challenge, a beautiful one, but a challenge. And early on, I was disappointed things didn't take off as quickly as I wanted them to. I thought, wow, I have this great idea, and I'm being told that this is great and it's needed, but I'm not landing that client that I want that to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
And so I kept reminding myself that the journey that I'm on is building towards that. So the skills that I'm developing and honing and illustrating in the role that I'm in at that moment, I was very, very selective about if I made a move career-wise, it had to be a stepping stone toward that consulting work, toward that independent work. So being at the crime lab, I was working in laboratory management and leading a lot of the training initiatives. And I wanted to do more, but it just wasn't an option. The role did not allow for that. So that's when I moved on to higher ed as director of professional development so that I could develop more skills there at a broader scale. So I tried to remind myself of that and be mindful of that. And then in 2024, my mom got ill and she passed away a few months later. And when that happened, I put everything on pause. You know, I was working full time and I knew that I only have the energy to work and be with my family.
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't going to be forever. I didn't know how long it would be, and I took my time with it. So I took about a year and didn't do any consulting work, but I still maintained relationships and did what I could to build them. And then I just knew it was like this cloud lifted and I was ready. And not only that, but I had established or developed more self-awareness, and I had been reminded life is really short and I need to do what I love. You never know what's going to happen. And at that point, I felt financially and professionally, I was there.
Yeah.
So that's when I, started to strategize. And within a few months, I moved into this full time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we were all lied to by the movie, right? If you build it, they will come. Yeah, that's. I just wish it was so, right? I just wish it was so.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Can we lean into that self-awareness piece a little bit too, Lori Ana? You're still very much in that doing everything phase. So what have you had to stop doing or rethink about how you work?
It's a great question. So I know what I don't know, and I'm very humble and honest about what I don't know and what my area of expertise is not. I'm decent with financial planning, but I still want a professional helping me with that. And marketing and, the creative content development, unless it's chemistry related and the chemism, I'm afraid I can do that. But the actual marketing piece, that is so outside my wheelhouse. So those are areas I'm going to outsource and I'm going to budget for it and I'm going to prepare for it because I know there are professionals who have so much experience and education in this area. I'm going to let them handle it.
Yeah.
And, just like if I need a lawyer, I'm going to get a lawyer. I don't have a law degree, right? So in certain areas, I'm saying, just take it, and I'll budget for it and it'll be an investment in my business. But another area that I'm starting to really dive into is AI and learning how I can utilize AI as a small business owner to optimize the work that I'm doing and my reach and client profiling and proposals and things of that nature. So I've recently started reading up on it. I'm going to be enrolling in a master class for it as well so that I can utilize the technology to support me.
Yeah. Hey guys, just a quick break to thank our affiliate partner, HubSpot. We are thrilled to announce our partnership with HubSpot, the ultimate all-in-one CRM platform. HubSpot helps you streamline marketing, sales, and customer service with powerful tools to grow your business faster. From lead generation to automations, it's got you covered. By using the link in the description, you not only get to start your HubSpot journey for free, but you'll also be supporting our work here on the show. Now it's back to today's episode.
That's a great move.
Yeah, just on AI and within the STEM industry itself, the impact of AI. Have you got some comments on that or some insights?
I don't I don't have a much developed thought on it at this time because I'm still assessing it.
Right.
And I'm still trying to evaluate. I think that it's going, I've talked to other scientists about that, and there's some division.
Yeah.
I think that it is going to be an extremely useful tool in terms of the chemical work that we do. Like, for example, just a very simple one. If I'm starting to do an experiment, I need to do what's called a lit review. And I'm just going to be assessing all of the literature, all of the articles that are published, peer reviewed on this topic, right? And in grad school, I did that, and I wrote it up. I would prepare my experiments around this.
Yeah.
And it took weeks at times, depending on what the topic was. And so I can see AI being able to pull that together in a matter of hours.
Yeah.
And, I know it's used in patent work. I used to work in patent law for a little while. And I spent a long time assessing prior art, with patents. If you can teach AI how to write one, then certainly that would expedite things. So I see it as a tool to expedite things and offer suggestions, maybe even experimental routes that one could try. But yeah, so I think it'll really expedite things and play a supportive role.
Yeah, interesting times ahead, I think. So let's talk about identity shifting. Obviously, you've gone from being a chemist to being a coach, and now you're building a business. How have you navigated that identity shift?
I don't consider it a shift. I'm a chemist at the end of the day. I always consider myself a chemist. And that's a common thing in the field. So you have all of these chemists out there, but they're not all working at the bench. I don't work at the bench anymore. Some of them are in management. Some of them are in marketing. Some of them are in sales. Some of them are in business development. Some of them work in legal, with intellectual property. So there are so many different places for chemists to live. And I think that's just such a testament to the analytical mind, because at the end of the day, even if I'm not a chemist, I'm an analytical thinker. And I apply that to everything that I do. It's just how I function because it's how I think. It's not the best way. It's not the worst way. It's just the way I work. So I've always considered myself an analytical thinker first. I do that in chemistry, right? That's my application.
Yes.
Right. But yeah, so I feel I've always felt pretty comfortable in that identity.
That's great. That was a different answer than I was expecting. I love it.
So just on that, diving into that a little bit more, I guess the chemist side versus the leadership side, they're kind of two different things. And so what did you have to learn about people, not science, that changed how you lead and coach?
I think that people and science are comparable. And I've always described humans as the most complicated biochemical reactor I've ever encountered. So, humans and elements are pretty similar. They have predictable behaviors based on known characteristics. So I can assess a person and develop a compositional analysis just like I would a molecule. So for a person, I might say, well, this person has a specific communication style. They process information a certain way. So I can determine that this is maybe the best way to communicate with them or share information. An element, very simply, the number of electrons are going to determine how that element is going to behave. So there are a lot of parallels to me. I see them very similarly. And I see people as, whether you want to think of them as biochemical reactors or molecules or elements, but there is a set way of understanding. There's a framework that I can use to understand them.
And all right, the loaded question then, do you personally find people or science easy to anticipate and understand?
I do feel they're similar. And I think that I am probably the only person that feels that way. Most chemists will tell you science. They think people are unpredictable. I don't. And maybe it's because I focused a lot of my time and energy on developing my emotional intelligence for my own personal life and also for work. But because of that, I feel that I can key in on people pretty well, and I can predict how they may react to something pretty well and understand where they're coming from rather easily. But it's something that I've honed and developed. So I think it's a skill one can develop. I find them, again, to be comparable. I always show them that people are my favorite element. I find them, so I guess the answer to your question is I'd prefer people because I find them more engaging
Yeah, wow.
to interact with.
Well, I reckon most scientists would have, like you said, would have leaned the other way. Oh, give me the elements.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've built this through networking and leveraging your career. What's actually worked best building your client base so far? And what advice would you give to anyone listening who might be trying to do the same?
Network.
What was that word again? Network.
Networking is the best tool to finding a job. It's also, in my opinion, the best tool in consulting to find work.
Yeah.
So utilizing that network, being able to establish yourself, getting help when you need it. In the US, there's an organization called SCORE. I'm sure that there's something comparable in other countries as well. And SCORE is a group of volunteers or business professionals and leaders that volunteer their time to mentor new business owners. And that's an incredible resource. Local Chamber of Commerce, ours has an executive mentorship program. It has a entrepreneur boot camp. So things of that nature, professional organizations in your area, in your field, are also going to be tremendous. So my advice would be network, but also utilize any resource that you can get. I used a business coach that I paid for at the beginning. And I'd say do your research because I really should have gone a different route. It was money that I didn't feel I got the investment return. So that's an option too as well, but just really do your research before you start spending money on different programs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that networking piece really does
Yeah.
help. But at the same time, it can be a lot when you're trying to navigate life, work, and all these things, and you've got all these networking events popping up, and there's so many. Was there times while you were going through your networking journey where you had to go, okay, this network's not for me, or learn to say yes and no and really figure out who is and isn't an actual, successful business person? Because I think there's a lot of people kind of wearing these masks at those things sometimes and can lead you astray, and you can land in their pockets. Like you said, you sort of felt that you maybe didn't get the money's worth. How did you navigate that?
I certainly, the first the business coach I hired, I think the first few sessions were great, but I didn't need that whole package. So being able to advocate for yourself, and I didn't know better. So I should have said, oh, can I just do 3 instead of 10, right?
Yeah.
And then I can get more if I see value in it, right? So advocating for oneself, if something feels like too big of a commitment, too big of an ask, it's absolutely okay to negotiate that. And then with the networks, I would say consider what is your goal? Who do you want to connect with? What's your ideal connection, right? Or connections. And do those individuals attend these events, or are they a part of this organization? And you can look at those you admire already in the field, and you can cold message them on LinkedIn. You can reach out to people and ask them, and it doesn't have to be a big ask. You can say, what's one recommendation you would make for me at this juncture? And it's an easy ask. You're not asking them to connect you with anyone. Maybe they will. But if they can point you to, hey, this organization is great. You should join this one, or this person, or this resource.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah. So other than the networking piece, Lori Ana, if someone was starting out in a niche consulting or coaching business today, based on your journey and your experience, what system or approach would you tell them to focus on first?
I would encourage them to develop a strategy, a flexible strategy, because it's going to change. You know, we may think that we know exactly how things are going to go, but develop a flexible strategy based on the market analysis you've done and competitor analysis that you've done for that niche market. And particularly, what are the opportunities in this market? What are your competitors doing? How do you compare to that? What gaps are they not filling? What vulnerabilities and risks might there be in this market as well, depending on the market that you're in? So identifying those pieces and then developing the product or services that you think will fill those gaps, right? And setting really manageable goals. We, like we said, you think you'll build it and they'll come, and then sometimes they don't. We don't have clients.
Yeah.
So, consider those. Even if I had a goal at one point of, I'm going to reach out to 2 connections a day. It's a really reasonable goal.
Yeah.
Reach out to 2 connections a day. I have a messaging that I want to share with them. That's great. Make sure your goals are manageable so that you're not burning yourself out, especially if you're still working full time and have other family commitments. But setting those manageable goals and acquiring resources where you can help support you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what decision are you currently avoiding pulling the trigger on because you know it'll create more problems that you don't want to inherit?
So I wouldn't necessarily call it avoidant behavior, but I would say that I find myself in a new space that I didn't anticipate that I am easing into because of the unknown, right? The uncertainty and the unknown. And that is, I find myself now working with clients who have, vacancies. So either a resignation or retirement or something, and they're not sure whether or not they should backfill that position, right? And one of the things that I love doing the most is succession planning and critical function analysis. So I enjoy working with companies to determine, do you have a step-in plan? Do you have a succession plan? And what should that look like? And I find myself now where I'm becoming a part of that step-in plan. And I'm offering, now that I am fully consulting, I'm able to fill some of those gaps. So I'm contracting with them, and they're able then to save money on the salary and the benefits package, which is an interesting new model. And so it's kind of, is it sustainable, right? Is it something that I'm going to be able to manage? It's a different model than what I'm used to. I'm used to being more of this independent consultant with the work that I'm doing here. And now I'm looking at being more of an integrated part of an organization. So that's something that is very different. And I'm starting to dip my toe in and see, does that model work?
Yeah, right.
Right. Lori Ana, you've said that you want to scale nationally and build a team. So what's the biggest risk if you don't figure that out in the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, the big risk is I would certainly lose any lead that I have right now in the market, considering the competition is pretty low. If a competitor stepped in, particularly someone who's maybe using AI to work faster and more efficiently than me, that is a big risk. So that's why I'm trying to get ahead of it. That said, though, it's a huge market. So I'm optimistic there's always going to be work available. But for the scale that I want to get to, which is to really shift the culture at a national and eventually global scale as it comes to, how we interact with people and manage them in these areas, then I need to maintain that momentum.
Yeah. Interesting. Has there been a point, you said there's not a lot of competition. Has that made it easy to settle or just to go a little bit slower than you might have otherwise would? Or have you recognized that there are, like you just mentioned there, if someone steps in, so you'll still all go? I'm just interested in that. If there's not an outside stimulus, are you just a bit cruisy, or are you still, going hard?
Yeah, it's definitely given me a little comfort.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to allow myself to be too comfortable in that space, because like you pointed out, that's a risk, right?
Yes.
So it's definitely given me a little bit of that, but I'm trying, now that I'm doing this full time, I'm really trying to keep my foot on the pedal. But that said, even so, part of my model, as you mentioned, creating a team and standardizing this as a process is eventually going to create more people like me, and out there doing this work. And at which point, we'll see where I fit in and how I, I'm still engaged with this. Is it time for something new then? Perhaps, right? I'm always open. That's where that flexible strategic goals come in mind. I'm always open to shifting that and seeing other opportunities may come up. I may work in different industries. We don't know.
Yeah. Just on that, I want to circle back to your goals that you mentioned just before Steve asked his last question about wanting to scale internationally and all these really amazing, and I would love to see it happen for you. Is there a bit of a roadmap that you're following, or do you sort of stick to, okay, what am I doing just this next year? How do you sort of space that out for yourself?
It's a great question, and it's still under construction.
Yeah. I'm sure it is.
Right now, I'm trying to evaluate the opportunities, and I do have some strategic planning about how to scale this at the national level, and that is something that I am working in to accomplish in the next year, as far as having a vehicle to do it and having the reach to do it. So that's something that's very much in progress. And I think after that, things are going to become more clear as far as the right next steps, because then there's going to be more organizations involved. There's going to be more people involved. And so I try not to get too far ahead of myself, because I don't want to have tunnel vision and I don't want to miss another opportunity. So my goal is to get to point B. How I get there is quite flexible.
Yeah, that's a good way to be, because I think sometimes, that tunnel vision can really remove a lot of those opportunities.
So actually, just another follow-up to that, Lori Ana, how much time do you spend on strategic planning like that? Or is it all getting clients and servicing clients?
I spend more of the front end. So before I even left my full-time job, I made this plan. So I strategized it beforehand.
Yeah.
And then I made the move, and at that point I had already had conversations with organizations and individuals who I felt would further the plan. And so I felt really confident about it. That's why I made the move that I did.
Yes.
And so now it's more of fine tuning.
Yeah.
Maybe the original pathway that I had planned isn't exactly the way we're going to go. We're going to actually deviate a little bit here, but that's still going to get us there.
Yeah.
So big picture planning, I try to do in the beginning in terms of point B is the goal. And these are the reagents that are going to help us get there. But there's room for some adjustments to that signal.
Yeah. Love that. That's great. So if someone was trying to build a business while still working full time, what's the cheat code? Everyone likes a cheat code.
Come on, give us the shortcuts. Give us the shortcuts.
Based on what you've experienced, what would you say is a cheat code to doing both without burning out or stalling the progress?
I would come back to those manageable goals.
Yeah.
So setting those manageable goals and even when I was working full time, I developed this big picture idea, right? And this strategy for how I could accomplish it. And so I'd say putting some time into that and then utilizing all of those resources that I mentioned before. Educate yourself. LinkedIn Learning is a great tool. There are lots of other great tools out there. Learning how you can use AI to help you so that you don't have to spend as much time doing certain things, outsourcing, if you need to, and financially planning, making sure that, you have a solid footing before taking that risk. And then, of course, all of that networking, but incrementally, because you're working full time. And at the end of the day, if you can't function cognitively, you can't get anything done. So taking care of your body and then making time for that and putting it on your schedule and considering that maybe part of your strategic plan and your goals is to take care of you mentally, emotionally, and physically so you can function best and have the best ideas and best execution on the work you're doing.
Oh, such great advice, because I think that's a piece that a lot of people sort of push to the side because they're so eager to get to the goal. They throw it all on the plate. Oh, there's not enough room. I'll put me to the side because I really need to get to this point B right now. But like you said, you can't function cognitively if you're not looking after yourself. So thanks for saying that. That's very important.
Lori Ana, as we've come towards the end of our time together, one of the signature questions we have here on the Business Game is around this concept of the boss fight, where as the boss, you have to fight your way through a problem before it all breaks for you. So what's been the hardest moment for you so far in your business journey, that real boss fight of building your own business, and how did you get through it?
I'd say the biggest challenge was getting close to that burnout in 2024.
Yeah.
And so it comes back to the previous question about how do you start out and not burn out. And because I put so much time and energy into my own wellness and well-being, I recognized immediately what was happening. And I was able to take a step back and say, if this is for me, if this is my journey, it will still be there when I'm ready. But right now, I need to make a change and I need to focus on me because, I'm the most important element right now in this equation. It's just me. So I need to be at my best, and I don't want to risk my professional reputation by pushing through and delivering subpar work.
Yeah.
And so that was really important to me, to be honest with myself and with others and say, I'm taking some time away. I'm going to focus on these things. And when I'm ready, it'll be great. And it was. And not knowing, having that unpredictability and uncertainty, humans hate that, right? We want certainty, stability, predictable. Our brains love it, right? And life is the opposite of all of that.
Yeah.
So being able to sit in the uncertainty and know that, I was doing what I needed to in that moment. I have the tools and resources that I need, and I will get there, was a really important skill to have then and now, because life is just as uncertain right now.
Yeah.
It's just uncertain more in this particular area.
Was that taking a step back? Was that hard almost from an ego perspective? Because, you're a doctor, you're intelligent, everyone knows you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And for you to be able to take a step back it's not an admission of defeat, but, it doesn't necessarily look good in a professional sense. So was that a hard ego fight to have, to do that?
I've done a lot of ego dismantling work for myself. And it's work that I do with my clients.
Yeah.
So for me, it was practicing what I preach. And it's really illustrating to them that not only am I advising you to do these things when you need to, but I'm having to do them as well. And I can model it for you. So, but of course, total, human moment, I was very disappointed.
Yeah.
Very disappointed that things were not going the way that I had wanted, especially struggling with a loss. But I knew, at the end of the day, back to what is my product? I don't want to deliver subpar product.
Yeah.
And then potentially, eventually not be able to get clients because I am delivering work that isn't meeting their standards.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for the rapid fire round.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Looking forward to this. Yeah.
All right. Steve, do you want to take first shot?
Okay, here we go. So just in a sentence or less, Lori Ana, we'll fire 10 questions at you one at a time. And are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right, you ready, Colleen?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
ready.
here we go. So are you an early riser or a night owl?
Early riser.
One piece of tech you couldn't live without.
My phone.
What's your coffee order?
It's actually tea. It's chai tea.
Oh, nice. What's the best investment you ever made?
In myself.
Great answer.
Office or work from home?
Work from home.
Okay. What's your book or podcast recommendation?
Oh, that's a really good one. I'd say I really love, this is going to sound out there, but The Old Soul's Guide to Life is one of my favorite books.
Okay.
Okay, Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
What's your go-to productivity hack?
That's a great one. Well, hopefully it'll be AI soon.
Okay. What was your first job?
I mowed lawns when I was 12.
Wow.
Oh, there you go. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what career would you choose?
I'd probably be a psychologist.
Wow.
Go.
I do have one more question, though. We spoke about it off camera, but I think people would want to know, with your law background and so forth, working for the for the New York State Police, all the shows, Law and Order, all those things. Is that real, or based on your experience, it's not really like that? Please say it's real, because I so want it to be real.
No, unfortunately, it's not
okay.
very realistic. But Forensic Files is a really good one.
Okay. All right. I am disappointed, but I'll cop that on the chin.
Yeah. One final question. If business truly is a game, Lori Ana Valentin, how do you define winning?
Empowering others. If I can give them a tool, an approach, help dismantle limiting belief, then I have succeeded.
Yeah. Wow. Great answer. So where can our listeners find you online?
I am on LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect. Nice and easy. Well, thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation. I've pulled so much from it myself. What about you, Steve?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So hearing your journey has been a fascinating thing, especially coming from that scientific background and making it meld to business, and your take on people and science and how you've used science to, I guess, analyze people almost and help them through that analysis. So, yeah, really, really interesting. So, yeah, thank you and good luck. So, look, folks, that's all we've got time for. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to The Business Game and check out the playlist for the level of business you're currently playing.
Because every founder is somewhere on the game board, from 0 all the way to 200 billion. Choose your level, and we'll see you next time.
This is the